Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for our final webinar of 2021. My name is Aisling and I'm the Online Content Coordinator here at Relationships Australia WA. This webinar has been brought to you from our West Leederville office in Western Australia. It's safe to say it's been a challenging year for us all. So today we are delighted to present our lunchtime webinar titled The Power of Saying No at Christmas. We would like to begin by acknowledging the Noongar people as the traditional custodians of the land on which we are presenting today and pay our respects to their elders, past, present and future. I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here with us today. Now, Christmas time is a significant and challenging time for many of us, and it is usually a time where we need to make many important choices. So today we have Gail and Katrina here to discuss the power of saying no. And they'll give you some tips and strategies to help you focus on what is important to you to help you enjoy a fulfilling festive period. Now, please note the information discussed in this webinar is general in nature and does not take into account specific personal situations or circumstances that you may be currently experiencing. You should consider whether the information is appropriate for your needs and where needed, seek professional advice. If you or someone you know is experiencing a crisis situation, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14 or emergency services on 000. Now, we hope you enjoyed today's webinar and please post any questions you might have into the chat box and we'll do our best to answer them. But now I'm going to hand over to your presenters, Gail and Katrina. Hi, Gail. Hi, Katrina.
Hi, Aisling. Thank you
so much for joining us. We're really looking forward to your webinar. So I'm going to hand over to you now.
Well, hello. Hi, everyone. Hi, Katrina.
Hi, Gail. How are you today?
I'm fabulous.
Great.
Getting it going here. Excellent. Okay, well, lovely to have you all here today. Welcome to Relationships Australia and Saying No at Christmas. One of the great things about Christmas is it brings with it lots of positives and negatives for many people. And today we're going to have an interesting discussion. I know that I have two grown children and we have been through many changes over the years with our Christmases, and that has indeed required that often I say no and have those difficult conversations. What about you, Katrina?
Yep, I've got this same sort of thing. I think as you get older, you just get lots and lots more going on. And you've got to make more adjustments. So yes, I've had to learn to say no, certainly.
I think it's like super tricky to sort of to navigate. So let's talk about the very first topic that I want to. Oh, sorry, I'm getting us through to the right slide here. I had great expectations, and here we go. Here they are, great expectations. So I want to encourage everybody today to talk to us in the chat and use that. So say hello in the chat if you're there to us today. And if you have any questions, like Aisling was saying before, use the chat to type for us and introduce yourself and ask us some questions. So let's get started. What are some of the things that people have expectations about at Christmas? What are some of the things that people have expectations about at Christmas? And I don't know about you, Katrina, but as I said before, some of them are positive and some of them not so positive. Some of them can be a little bit negative. So the positive things are things like giving gifts, receiving gifts, beautifully cooked food and beautifully presented food, having fun, new clothes, feeling lots of really good, positive feelings. But on the other side, on the flip side, the things that we might not be looking forward to, and I know this is something that certainly sometimes happens to me, is that worry about gaining weight and eating too much food, drinking too much. The disappointment, we can have expectations around that. No family time, not enough family time with the people that really matter to me, and spending a lot of money. That's tough too. Hey, Katrina, what do you think to that?
Yeah, well, there's lots of things going on at Christmas. I think Christmas is it's such a big time of the year. I think that's what it is. It's like, it's sort of the end of the year and it's like the last hurrah for everything. So everyone puts a lot of effort into Christmas.
And I think what we can call that is that sometimes we have this attitude of perfectionism which sits around us around Christmas time, and everything, even though in many ways it's unrealistic, we want everything to be just right. So I don't know about you, but I go mad scrubbing the house and shopping and buying lots of food, and it's a time when we expect everything to be perfect. And I guess the question is that realistic? Is that something that we can honestly say that that is exactly how it should be happening for us? I think it's worth a really big think. And also we have a lot hangs on that word should. Things should be this way. And when we say the word should, it fills us often with dread and feelings of, dare I say, impending doom. And this idea, it sounds really grim, doesn't it? But it can fill us with difficult feelings. And also, I guess, this idea of, I don't know if anyone's ever heard this saying before, but expectations are really just premeditated resentments, because we're already thinking things can go wrong, or it's going to be too much, or things are going to go pear-shaped, and I just don't have enough of whatever it is. So Christmas can be a tricky time. So we might need to say no. We just might need to. We might have to say no at Christmas time. And as uncomfortable as that is, and as difficult as that is to say, it might be just something we have to do. So what are the reasons for saying no? What are some of the reasons we might say no? So if you have a look at the slide here, these are some of the reasons that we might have to say no. Things like big expectations, which we've already mentioned, money that we might not necessarily have. It's been a tricky time this last 2 years, and money might not be something I have enough of. And something that has become increasingly relevant as we've become much more environmentally conscious is this notion of, is all this stuff bad for the environment? Is having all this packaging, right? Sometimes things come in such big packaging. It's time consuming. It feels greedy. It's too many activities. And it's just time for a change. It's just time for a change. So those are some of the reasons, and you might be able to think of some more. And by all means, like I said, tap them into the chat. Seems people are a little bit chat shy at the moment, but please start throwing some stuff at us, because we really, really appreciate it. So the real reason for saying no at Christmas is so that we can have more of what is important to us. Christmas is a time of getting what is important to us happening in our lives. So Katrina, what gets in the way though of us actually being able to say no?
Okay, well, I think that's something that we could ask everybody to put in the chat, and we can wait for some responses, Gail, because I think it's good to sort of, if people identify, you know, what stops them from saying no? Why do we say yes to so many things? So what do some people think about that?
Guilty. Look at that, feeling guilty.
Feeling guilty, yes, feeling guilty. What else? What are some of the other things that I
think I find it really tough saying no. Fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out, yes.
FOMO.
Yep, not wanting to disappoint. People-pleasing tendencies.
Thanks,
yep.
Caroline. Yeah, people-pleasing.
Yeah,
that's a tricky one.
So yeah, I think they're the sorts of basic things that stop us from saying no. I think that one about being guilty. So let's dive down into a couple of these, Gail. This feeling guilty at Christmas time. So you know, there's a lot of expectations on us, and the guilt part is we don't want to disappoint people. We don't want to disappoint ourselves. You know, we have a lot of expectations about what we should do, and we feel that if we don't do them, you know, that makes us feel guilty. Like I can remember when I said no to scrubbing the house from top to toe at Christmas time, I felt guilty that Christmas that I did it, and I thought, oh, the house is so dirty, everyone's going to notice, but no one noticed. And I felt really good after that, because I thought I'm never scrubbing the house for Christmas again. So that's something that I learned to say no to. I
haven't learned that one yet.
You haven't learned that one?
No.
That's a good one to learn for this year.
No.
But the other thing is disappointing other people. You know, if you're going to say no to going to, you know, an extended family gathering, or if you're going to go say no to your friends that you're not going to the Christmas party or things like that, it can, you know, we experience that feeling of guilt. We don't want to disappoint people. And the other thing is, when we say no, there is that fear of missing out. It's like, oh, you know, if we say no and we don't go, what's going to happen? What could be really good that we're not going to, you know, we're not going to get to catch up with these friends, or we're not going to get to eat a certain thing, or we might, you know, not have as much fun. So that's the fear of missing out. And we can also be a bit afraid of, you know, everyone in the family might have said, oh, I don't want to do such and such this year. And we can be afraid to be the one to actually make the first move. And I think that can be hard, can't it? That first move that we have to make. And I think the last thing on the slide is lack of respect. And I don't think it's usually from lack of respect of anybody else, because we, you know, the guilt and fear are usually because we are being respectful to other people. It's actually lack of respect for ourselves. You know, we put ourselves under so much pressure to say yes to everything and to do everything. So that lack of respect is for us, for our time. You know, it's just we don't respect ourselves enough to speak up for ourselves, things like that. So that's the lack of respect. So if those three things are getting in the way, how do we get the type of Christmas that is important to us? You know, we need to sort of try and, I guess, understand that those feelings are there and they're not going to go away. And we have to sort of act in spite of them in a way. Yeah. So we have to decide what's important to us, that what we wanted to attend to. And then we also have to decide, and this is probably where some people start, Gail, in deciding what isn't important to them, perhaps what they could let go. So the 3 steps so there's 3 steps to saying no. First of all, we have to decide what's important to us. The second step is to prioritize what's important to us. And the third one, which is probably the most difficult one, is to communicate your decisions to other people.
I think this is the hard one, isn't it? This is the tricky part.
Yes, it is.
The actual communication part, the fear part, and the letting people down. And I think that's really, really super difficult. So let's explore that a little bit, and let's work out how do we narrow down what's important. And I think that it's important for us, first off, to start to get clear. And I really do encouraging, Melissa's written, having to follow in-laws traditions. This is in relation to the previous one, having to follow in-laws traditions set in stone for years, disregard they don't work anymore. Oh, that is huge, Melissa. I think that's a big one, that whole tradition that's entrenched in a family. I know that that's something which, you know, we felt in our family. And it's not that you don't want to honour your family, it's just you might want something a little bit fresher that is more suitable for today. So it's a really, I think that's such a common one and such an important comment. Thanks, Melissa. So I'm sure in regard to that comment that there's something that Melissa could say about this in regards to what's most important to us at Christmas, and narrowing that down and really understanding me. And this isn't talking about other people. It might be talking about your immediate family, but what's really, really important to me, if I ask myself honestly. And I really encourage you to get a piece of paper in front of you and start getting familiar with that. Because a lot of the times people don't really think about that. They think about everybody else, as Katrina said. They're very respectful of other people, but not themselves. So what are some of the things that are important to you at Christmas? Write them in the chat. Tell us what's important. Aisling said breathing, space, and time to do nothing. Oh, Lordy, how good would that be, Katrina? I feel exhausted from this work here. So yeah, I would be loving that. I would absolutely be loving that. And I think that is something which a lot of people are talking about right now. The last 2 years have been tricky for people, and they want some breathing space. For certain, absolutely, for sure. Some of the other things are things like time with family, special food, nice social functions, holidays. I don't know where to though. Yeah, Helen says quality time with family and friends rather than racing around. As long as you're going to Dunsborough or Broome, you're safe as far as the holidays are going. But time with friends, peace and goodwill, those types of things, they're all about connection and people connecting with each other. So how do we decide though, how to do that. Like, how do we focus on what's important? Well, there are three things. For the purposes of the webinar today, we're going to talk about two characters, Josh and Helen. They are purely fictitious. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more. Characters that Katrina and I have made up. Some of them perhaps might be based in a little bit of truth, because I think we all share lots of things in common when it comes to Christmas. But the first step in having the Christmas you want is knowing what is important, which we've just established. And the most important consideration here is that you won't always get what you want. So just because you want something doesn't mean that others are going to even allow it to happen, because some people might push back really, really hard. So it does demand that we be flexible in determining what's important to us. But the real benefit of thinking about this question is that it lets you know what you need to focus on and what you can afford to let go of. So how do we do that? So we need to be mindful of three things. And as the slide says, if you can see the slide, if you're watching on a computer, hopefully you can see them. The first one is your values. The first one is your values. What is important to, in a values sense, around yourself and your immediate family, or the people that you're representing at Christmas time that you're working with. So your values, being respectful to those. The second one is important others in your life, and that means your people. Who are they? Who are the most important people that you need to be mindful of? So if you're a young family, that might be little children. It might be young children who desperately want to play with toys at Christmas time. So I remember that all too well. And then only taking responsibility for the things that truly belong to you. With values, let's look at values first. Values can be individual or family focused. They're about how you wish to operate in the world. They're about what's significant to your family. It's what makes your family quite unique and special and needs honouring at Christmas time. And that's what helps you decide, what's going to be most relevant. So maybe if people listening today could type in some values that they hold very dearly to themselves and their family, things that are very significant and important to them. Type them in, feel free. We can talk about them. If not, that's cool. Just listening quietly is cool as well. Aisling appreciates open communication. So being very honest. I think that would direct to honesty and integrity, which is, I think a lot of people find that value really, really important. The one thing about values that we do need to talk about, though, is that often what will happen is we have competing values. So they're in opposition. So what's important, say, for example, to me, might not be important to my husband, say, or to an extended family member. So having time to myself to relax at Christmas might not be important to my auntie, for example, who desperately wants a big get together with all the hoo-ha and the trimmings and the tinsel. So how do you allow for that? And that is precisely what needs to happen with values. We need to sort of weigh it up and understand that sometimes those values might be competing, and how do we get a little bit flexible with that? I'm going to use the example of Josh here. So let's introduce Josh. He's a lovely young man, and gift giving is very important to Josh's family. Super, super important. It's always been a big part of their Christmas tradition. But Josh, one of the things that Josh really values is generosity of spirit. That's not necessarily just about the material gifts, but he loves the spirit of generosity and enjoys the gift giving. However, the unfortunate thing for Josh is he's just lost his job as a gardener, which is really, really sad. And he's really struggling to pay his bills and pay that mortgage, which is very tricky at Christmas time. So there's another thing that he wants, and this is perfectly valid. He wants to have a ripper New Year's Eve with his friends. So spending time with his friends is really important to him as well as his family and the traditions. So how does Josh balance what is important to him with what he wants and what's valuable, as in being his friends, his family, gift giving, and the traditions? So we're going to come back to Josh soon. But one of the other considerations in determining what's important to us is also understanding our close relationships. And I've mentioned this previously, but really understanding what relationships am I trying to preserve and hold together, because, connection and being in relationships is what really makes the world go round.
I think that's what Roberta's saying here. She said one of her values is the connection and caring and respect for each other, their differences and their common traits. So I think that's, what a lot of people think about at Christmas time, which is probably one of the reasons why people don't want to say no.
Yes, that's valid. That's a really important thing to recognise, and we don't want to hurt people. But being with people is, well, as I said, it's what makes the world go round. So that's really important. But hand in hand with that then comes taking responsibility for what is mine. So I think the thing that having the Christmas we desire is understanding what actually belongs to me and what's somebody else's issue. And I think if we talk about that in connection to relationships, close relationships, sometimes our attitudes can get in the way at Christmas time. And I think this is a really important point, that if you have a hurt or a grudge or let's pretend somebody's hurt you in October or earlier in the year, and you're feeling a little bit resentful, is Christmas the time to use that as a tool to say no? And I guess the answer to that is probably no. I think the answer to that is to try and keep that separate and take some personal responsibility. Is how do I work with that relationship outside of Christmas to make Christmas about what it's really about, which is, as Roberta says, about connection and caring and respect. So really stepping into our own personal responsibility and not holding grudges is super important. So really thinking about that no and why we're saying no. Thinking about Josh, we know that Josh can't afford gifts and pay his mortgage and afford to go to the fancy New Year's Eve event, but something has to give. And but Josh starts making excuses not to go to his family Christmas because he's had a fallout with his mum over losing his job. She was pretty angry and he got angry in return, and ever since they haven't really been talking. And he thinks that's a convenient way to abscond from his Christmas responsibilities. And I'm wondering what you think about that. I'm wondering whether you think that's a valid thing to be doing and would stand up in a court of law, so to speak. So we'll come back to Josh a little bit later, but let's talk about now, how do we prioritize? Once we know all those things, how do we prioritize and work out how to balance the yes and the no? And that means staying aware of what's important and what the consequences might be, depending on what way we're going to decide. So we need to talk about how we're going to conduct ourselves based on not just what is important, but how we can actually fulfill it, how we can make it possible. So we need to make our decisions and communicate them once we know all this. So if we look at Josh again, we know that Josh's family values are generosity. He wants to go to New Year's Eve. His relationship with his mum is of the utmost importance. So I'll bring you back to that last sort of example of where his mind was at. So that belongs to Josh. And there are three things for him to consider. It's true he doesn't have money. That's his responsibility to work out. It's also true that his argument with his mum is also something that he has a responsibility to work out before Christmas. And number three, his responsibility is also to fathom whether or not he can afford New Year's Eve, whether he can fit it all in, and to make that decision rather than getting resentful or bitter. So what could Josh do? Well, it just works out that Josh has got a process. And the first is that he could make amends with his mum. He can make the decision to hold that relationship primary first. The second one is that he decides not to give gifts. He can't afford them, so he's not going to give them. However, his choice, his desire to honour his value of generosity of spirit means that he's going to instead give gardening to his family for Christmas. And thirdly,
do my gardening.
I know, I've actually booked him. He's coming to mow my lawns. Old Josh is going to come, and or young Josh, I should say, is definitely coming to mow my lawns. You can have yours after mine, Katrina.
Okay.
And the third thing that he's decided is he's going to spend time with his friends on New Year's Eve. So I guess his final decision is he's got to share that. He's got to communicate that. Katrina, do you want to tell us how to do that?
Yeah, sure. So I
Oh,
guess,
just before you do, sorry to interrupt. Roberta has just asked, will this be recorded so we can listen to it after? And the answer is yes.
yes, it is being recorded. Okay, so as I said at the, when we're talking about the 3 steps to know, the last one is probably the hardest step because we have to actually say what we've decided. And that takes a little bit of courage to do that. So we're going to talk about the ways we do that now. So there are really 2 parts to saying no. The first part is to actually say no. So if someone comes to you and says, hey, are you going to still come and do this? Or, can you do this for me or whatever? You actually say, no, I'm not going to. And the second one is to have a conversation with someone to tell them what you've decided. So Josh would be having the conversation. We'll talk about the conversation that Josh has in a minute. In communicating to others, you need to think about doing this well ahead of time. It's no point not deciding to go to Christmas lunch or deciding not to go to Christmas lunch and ringing up on Christmas Eve and saying, hey, I'm not coming tomorrow. That's not going to be very effective. So you need to do whatever you're going to do well ahead of time. So now would be a really good time. It's still a couple of weeks out. So this webinar is quite timely. The other thing is be prepared for people to push back on you. So that you're going to say no, or you're going to say, I'm going to do this, or whatever you're going to say. And they're not going to say, oh, good, great. I'm glad you've decided to can Christmas lunch after you've done it for the last 50 years. Yeah, that's fine. They're going to have objections. So really, a really important part of this is how to handle the objections that you're going to get when you do say no, or you do say to people, hey, I'm doing things differently this year. And the other thing is for you to be flexible as well.
I think too with that one is Katrina, is we also have to, and this is what you were talking about before, the guilt. We need to be prepared to sit with uncomfortable feelings and know that it's okay to feel them.
Yeah.
And, we can work with them too. Avoiding them all the time doesn't necessarily help us or get what we want.
No, exactly. Well, it doesn't help us at all.
Yeah.
So yes, just being able to sit with our difficulties, our guilt and our fear and all those other things, it is very important. So the first thing is really, we need some new beliefs about saying no. So what do people believe about saying no? If I say to you, you have to say no, what do people believe? What do people think about when they either hear no or when they have to say no to someone? What do people think about that? Anyone got any ideas?
I find it so hard.
You find it hard?
Yeah, I do. Even though I do this for a living, I still find it hard.
Yeah. So Aisling said it can be hard to say. Yes.
Really hard. It can be difficult. Unless it's to the last piece of chocolate cake. And then, if I've already had a piece, it might be easier. But I think saying no is generally quite difficult when someone is emotionally invested in your answer.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
It can be very hard. It can be very hard to say no. And some people hear no as rude. Has anyone ever had that type of experience where, you've said no to someone and they sort of respond to you as if that's very rude for you to say the word no? So it can be hard to say. So first belief is, it is okay to say no to something that you really don't want to do. So it's okay to say no. Hooray, you've got permission to say no. You can say, Katrina said. Oh, good. Aisling says yay. So you've got permission now. Second thing, it's okay to say no when you think your values are being tested. So if something is really important to you, it's actually really, really important for you to say no. Your values are about who you are. John Gottman talks about values. He says, if someone asks you to give up your values, it's like them asking you to give up your bones. So, if they came up to you and said, hey, can you give up your bones? Would you give up your bones? No, you wouldn't. So, yes. And no is a complete sentence. Yep, sometimes you can just say,
little one, but yeah.
So what are some of the other ways we can say no? So let's think of not using the word no. Let's think of some other ways of saying no. So we can say no and then no thank you. So that sort of softens a little bit. We can say, I love you and I value you. I just don't have the energy to do that this year.
Mm.
No.
Yeah.
Sorry, I won't be able to fit that in this year. That won't work for me this time. Actually, I don't have the capacity for that at the moment.
Mm.
It doesn't feel right for me now. And the last one is, thanks for thinking of me. That's just not for me.
That's my favorite.
That's your favorite?
Yeah, I do use that for all sorts of things. Thanks for thinking of me.
Okay.
I think it's a soft, gentle approach. I like that one.
It is. Okay, so it's actually good to practice saying no. So what I'm going to do, you've been sitting for a little while, so I'm just going to get you up to stand up. So
we do this together?
Yep, now I'm going to look really weird because you're just going to see.
You're just going to see my midriff.
So you see the middle section, but that's okay. So what I want you to do is wherever you are, stand up and put your feet apart.
Okay.
So just hip distance apart and just feel yourself really grounded into the floor, because it's important that you feel supported when you say no. And get the energy of that into your body. And then you're going to put your non-writing hand on your hip.
Yep.
And you're going to put your writing hand out in front of you like a stop sign. And you're going to say no. So
No.
say no.
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 Now, you're not going to do that. You can sit down now. You're not going to do that when you say no. I don't encourage you to do that. That could be a bit weird. But I want you to picture that in your mind when you say no. Just picture in your mind, you're standing on the floor, you're feeling really supported in your body by the floor, and you've got that feeling in your body of, this is okay for me to say no. So it gives you some of that personal power.
Feels powerful.
It does. It
Yeah.
does. Gives you a little bit of extra oomph. So let's meet Helen. So Helen she's done the bit that Gail talked about before. She has decided that her number one priority is her emotional health. And she's made a new rule about that. She's made a new rule that says that when she's tired, she's not going to go out to social functions. Because what was happening was she would go out to social functions and she would just be really tired. And it would really affect her for quite a long time afterwards. So now the challenge with Christmas is that she's close with her family, and they usually do a big Christmas lunch at the family home. There's about 30 people there, and they have all the trimmings, and everybody comes, and it's loud, and there's lots of noise and lots of kids running around, and she's just decided she can't do that this year.
So just normal, everybody's Christmas, yeah?
Yeah. Well, she's been working in the public health department, you see, this year, Gail, and she's exhausted. So
That explains it.
that she really does need a rest.
Yeah.
So she is going to spend Christmas Day at home. And then she has decided that what she'll do is on Boxing Day, she will attend the family picnic. Now, the family picnic is a lot more casual. And so she figures that she'll be able to stay for just a little while, and then she'll be able to just go when she needs to. So Gail we're going to do a role play. So Gail is going to be Helen's mum, and I'm going to be Helen.
Helen, are you still planning on coming for lunch on Christmas Day?
Mum, I love you and I really value you. And I just don't have the energy to do Christmas lunch this year. How do you think that's going to go down with Helen's mum?
I'm really cross.
Okay, she's really cross.
Yeah.
So we'll park Helen for a little while, and we'll come back. We'll come back to her later, because we're going to talk about a little bit now. Gail, can you please move the slide to having the conversation?
Oh yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
Oh,
We're going to,
sorry, I must have missed that one.
slide.
Sorry about
Because
that.
these are some of the tips around having a conversation. Yeah, you're going to stay out of blame, listen to responses, keep to the issue, be respectful, all those things. So let's think about Josh. So Josh is going to have this conversation with his family, and you talked about Josh with Gail. So he might like to make times initially to have some connection with his mum and apologise or make amends or whatever he needs to do about what the breach between them before. And then after he'd done that, he might then have a conversation that went, or begin a conversation that goes something like this. Mum, I'm having a little bit of difficulty with managing my expenses this year, especially after I've lost my job. And I'm not going to be able to spend money on buying gifts, as well as being able to enjoy some downtime with my friends for New Year's. I would still like to honour the gift giving and was wanting to tell you that my gift giving is going to be a little bit different this year. I've decided to give everyone some of my time and energy. So what I thought I would do is I do what I was good at. I do everyone's gardening. I'll give them a few hours. I'll give them like a voucher, and I'll have, Josh is going to give you 5 hours of gardening. What do you think? How do you think that'd go down? What do you think of that idea? So that's how Josh could begin a conversation with his mum. So you can see how he just sort of reflected what was true for him and what he decided, and he did it, in quite a factual way.
I think what I liked about that, Katrina, as well, what's really important, it's on the slide, but I think he stayed out of blame.
Yep.
He stayed out of pointing the finger anywhere else, and he used the I, like I. He didn't sort of say, oh, mum, your tradition stinks, or, he didn't sort of point the finger. He kept it solely on himself, which I think is a really good way of getting the best possible outcome.
And the other thing too, Gail, is he took responsibility. He didn't say, oh, poor me, it's not fair, I don't have a job and I can't afford to give anybody anything, etc., etc. He sort of said, look, I really want to keep to my values of giving, and I'm not going to go into blame mode. I'm going to keep to the spirit of Christmas as well.
Yeah, that was nice and respectful.
It was.
Mm.
Okay, so if we go on to the next slide, what we're going to have a little look at is what we're going to do when people don't like the change that we've made. So there are some examples on the slide that you can see: broken record, agree with the truth, disagree, calling time out, setting consequences, being flexible. So Gail and I are going to do another role play so you can hear some of these in real life. So this is Helen talking to her mum about Christmas, and follow on from that.
Mum mode.
Yep, getting into mum mode.
Okay, so, but Helen, you know that we always have Christmas lunch together.
Yes, I know I attended Christmas lunch in the past, but I'm not going to attend it this year.
So what you're saying is that your family is no longer important to you.
No, I'm not saying that my family is no longer important to me. I'm just telling you that I'm not going to be attending Christmas lunch this year.
Well, Christmas is just not going to be the same. I can't believe that you have so little regard for my feelings.
Mum, I can hear that you're upset. Perhaps it would be better if we talked about this another time, maybe when you've had a chance to think about it.
I can't believe that you're spoiling Christmas. You are so selfish.
Mum, you are really upset, and I don't mean to upset you. And if we continue on this way, then someone's going to be hurt. I really would prefer to talk about this another time. So a couple of days later.
I'm still very upset that you decided not to attend Christmas lunch. I know you're tired, but I'm still upset.
I know, Mum. I hear that you're really upset. Change is difficult, and I am so tired this year. I really need some time to have a rest. I thought about how important it was to you that we're a family together. And so I'm really going to make an extra special effort to come to the picnic on Boxing Day. So can you see all the ways that Helen used those responses? First of all, when her mum said, we always have Christmas lunch together. She agreed with that. She said, yes, I did. I do know that we had it in the past. And then she used the broken record technique. I'm not coming to Christmas lunch this year. And then when Helen said, your family is no longer, her mum said, your family is no longer important to you. She said, no, my family is very important to me. So she disagreed with that. And she said, but I'm not going to be attending Christmas lunch this year. So that broken record technique again.
It's staying firm, isn't it? It's being firm.
Yeah. It is. And she only spoke for herself, and she was very respectful, and she didn't get upset or buy into the I'm really upset with you or the you're so selfish. She just said, look, Mum, I know that this is important to you, and she just maintained her ground. And then she showed a little bit of flexibility and timeouts. Then, she called a timeout. So you can see that those 6 things there can be really helpful to you when you have said your no, or you've had the conversation and there's some sort of pushback. You can use those things just to help to bolster your own position, and also to show respect for other people's positions as well.
So what have we said today, Katrina? Let's sum it up. So we've said that in order to have the Christmas that you want and get what's important to you, we need to do 3 things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need to, first off, we need to work out what's important to us.
Yep.
We need to think about our values. We need to think about our people.
Yep.
And we need to take personal responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is we need to prioritize that. We need to sort of give it some sort of ranking, I guess, and sort of nut it out. And then the final thing is we need to communicate that, and that can look like a no if we just want to say no,
Yep.
or it can be a conversation that we initiate. And to have that conversation, we need to be really firm, clear, flexible. We need to stay in the position of just talking about ourselves, not be blamey.
Yeah.
Am I missing anything? Have I missed
Well,
anything?
I think the really important thing is that we are able to respond appropriately when people push back.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we might be able to do all the other things okay, mostly, but a lot of us sort of lose ground when there's that pushback, and we sort of go, oh well, all that assertive language and those I statements, they don't really work. And it's like, well, that's only really a conversation opener. The most important thing is what you do when people have objections. So really the last part, that last little part, what you do when they have objections and how you handle them is actually very, very important. So
Super
I think
important.
people can remember that part. That would be great.
And really sitting with uncomfortable feelings, dealing with when it feels a bit uncomfortable, that we can't back away from that, because it's just the most natural thing in the world to feel uncomfortable. So where are we at? We've sort of gotten to the end of our little what a fork in the road. We've sort of hit the end, and it's time to say thank you to everybody for being online with us today, and thank you for being a part of it with us. We're really grateful to be at the end of 2021 and hoping for a wonderful 2022, everybody.
All the twos.
It's all twos. Yeah. And welcome back to Aisling. Hello.
Hello, thank you so much, Gail and Katrina. Not only was that really fun, but I know I learned some really powerful tips and strategies that I can take into the festive season, not just this year, but next year as well. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and information with us. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
See you later.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Also, a big thank you to all of you here who joined us for today's webinar. We hope you found the information useful. So here at Relationships Australia, we run a number of education courses on a variety of topics on relationships, as well as our counselling services. These services are available across WA as well as online. So please take a look at our website for more information on what is available in your area. You can visit our website at www.relationshipswa.org.au, our Facebook page at /relationshipswa, or call us on 1300 364 277 to find out more about our services and how we can support you. Again, it's been a privilege to host this webinar today, and thank you again, and we hope to see you at our next lunchtime webinar. We hope you all have a great Christmas and New Year.
Thanks, everybody. Merry Christmas and season
Bye.
greetings.
Take care.
Bye.